Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony will begin shortly. Please take this opportunity to silence all electronic devices and remove your proxies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the retirement ceremony honoring Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Czarney as he retires from the United States Air Force after 4 years of honorable service. Will everyone please rise for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the playing of our national anthem. Lieutenant Colonel Czarney's father, Ron, will now lead us in the invocation.
Heavenly Father, we gather today with grateful hearts to celebrate a remarkable milestone, the retirement of a beloved son, husband, father, friend, and faithful servant of our nation. Lord, we give you thanks for the gift of his life and for the 24-plus years he has devoted to the United States Air Force. We thank you for the courage, discipline, sacrifice, perseverance, and dedication that have marked his years of service. Through deployments, challenges, long days, difficult decisions, and countless moments that many of us may never have seen, you have been faithful to him. We are grateful for your protection and your sustaining grace. Today, we also pause to give thanks for the gift he has been to us. Before he was an airman, he was our son. He has brought joy, love, laughter, strength, and countless treasured memories into our lives. We thank you for the man he has become and for the privilege of watching his life unfold. His service to his country has been an honor to witness, but to us, his greatest gift has simply been who he is. As he closes this chapter of military service and begins a new season of life, we ask for your blessing upon him. Guide his steps, give him renewed purpose, and fill the years ahead with meaningful opportunities, good health, joy, and time with those he loves. Dear Lord, we also ask your blessing upon everyone gathered here today. Bless the family and friends who have supported him throughout the years. Bless the fellow airmen and veterans who served alongside him. Comfort and strengthen all those who have sacrificed in ways both seen and unseen for the sake of our nation and one another. May this celebration be filled with gratitude and joy as we honor not only what he has accomplished, but the person he is and the lives he has touched. And may the years ahead be a beautiful new chapter, one filled with peace, laughter, adventure, purpose, and a deep knowledge that his service mattered and that he is deeply loved. We give you thanks for bringing him safely to us this day. for the freedom he helped defend, and for the blessing of having him in our lives. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for those beautiful words, Ron. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. It is now my pleasure to introduce the presiding officer for today's event, the United States Air Force Academy Director of Admissions, Colonel Candace Pipes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ron, thank you for that lovely prayer. Thank you so much for that. Okay, welcome to the retirement ceremony for Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Czarney. It is my honor to serve as the presiding officer for this ceremony. We are here to celebrate Lieutenant Colonel Czarney's 24-plus years of service, along with his wife, Stacy, his son, Jake, his mom, Wendy, and his dad, Ron. There are also several other distinguished visitors in the audience that have traveled here today that I would like to call out. And as I say your name, feel free to put your hand up in the air to recognize you a little bit. Mr. Curtis Jordan, sir, thank you for being here. Colonel Christopher Hall from down the road at Peterson, thank you, sir. Colonel Olga Brandt up from San Antonio. Colonel Allison Gonzalez, commander of the Space Delta out at Joint Base Andrews. Thank you, ma'am. Great to see you. Colonel retired Shay Kinnebray and Colonel retired Patrick Alberton. Thank you all for being here. We have one of our superstar admissions liaison officer squadron leaders, Lieutenant Colonel Wynn, who is here today. Thank you. We have Lieutenant Colonel James Gallagher. There you go. Lieutenant Colonel Amanda Barrett. Lieutenant Colonel retired Clint Townsend. And Chief Master Sergeant retired Chuck Hopper. Uncle Chuck. That's right. Also a shout out to our USAFA admissions team for being here today. Admissions? I took the time to mention all of the visiting and distinguished guests because I think it's a testament, not only to the kind of officer, but to the kind of human being Jonathan Czarney is, that people from all four corners of this country showed up for Jonathan today. It truly means a lot that you all are here. Retirements are a wonderful opportunity to consider all of the accomplishments achieved throughout a career and to look ahead to the next chapter, but also a time to reflect on what initially brought us to this moment. Jonathan's choice to serve was informed by the legacy of service in his family. His father enlisted during Vietnam in the Air Force, and his uncle was a retired Chief Master Sergeant, both maintainers. Jonathan visited his uncle living near Luke Air Force Base every summer from the time he was 7 years old until he was 21, graduating from college. These visits had a huge impact on him and exposed him to different aspects of the military, from EOD to flight line ops. He was able to determine parts of the Air Force that were cool, but not for him, and other jobs where he thought he might excel. So when creating his dream sheet for Air Force jobs, he followed in the footsteps of his father and uncle and put maintenance first. As a throwaway option, he put contracting second as a buffer between his number 1 and number 3 option, which was Air Battle Manager. Times were clearly different 25 years ago because somehow the needs of the Air Force gave him contracting and not maintenance as his AFSC. Turns out his finance degree merged well with his career path and launched him on a globe-trotting journey where he, in fact, did excel. Jonathan didn't want me to regurgitate his career, but I did want to spend a little time speaking on some of the highlights. The first highlight was truly foundational to his success, and that is that he met, courted, and married Stacy. Jonathan Jonathan and Stacy met in an accounting class in college. I'll let him tell the story, but it was a rocky initial meeting, as I understand it, that eventually blossomed into over 20 years of marriage. Stacy committed to supporting Jonathan for the last 20 plus years and was a part of every success that Jonathan has had. That support includes 6 deployments, the first to Kuwait as the OIC of the Combat Readiness Flight. He then deployed to Bagram Air Base and then forward deployed to Islamabad and other locations as the Contingency Contracting Officer and Commander Services Contracts Flight. He went to Iraq as the lead administrative contracting officer for the Defense Contract Management Agency, where he established DCMA's first presence in Bahrain. He went to Qatar and then forward deployed to Bagram as the CENTCOM action officer for the Operational Contract Support Integration Cell. And finally, he went to Saudi Arabia as the director of the Host Nation Coordination Cell. He also spent a year at Osan Air Base in Korea, running the $55 million base sustainment contract that kept 5 air bases co-located at South Korean Air Force installations in a ready status. Turns out, Jonathan is a very good contracting officer. As a major and first-time squadron commander, his wing commander, Colonel Billy Thompson, called him the best contracting squadron commander I've seen. The new wing commander, Colonel Chad Franks, agreed, calling him the best contracting commander seen in my career. As a lieutenant colonel and second-time squadron commander of a Tier 1 contracting squadron, Colonel Boschert, the commander of the 99th Mission Support Group, called him the best contracting commander I've seen in 25 years. Again, the new 99th Mission Support Group commander, Colonel Figueira, agreed, calling him #1 of hundreds of contracting officers I've worked with in 23 years. It's no surprise then that when I asked Jonathan what his favorite part of being a contracting officer was, he said, being a squadron commander. It's the best job in the Air Force. I agree with you. Jonathan served honorably from his initial start at Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, handpicked to attend a specialized graduate contracting management education program where he received his MBA in contracting management, to McCord, both when it was just an Air Force base and then, to date us all, several years later when it was a joint base, to his favorite location, Sunnyvale, California, at the Defense Contract Management Agency, to Moody Air Force Base in Georgia, where he first commanded, to the Pentagon, working for the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisitions, to Las Vegas, where he commanded in the 99th Contracting Squadron, a sister squadron to the 99th Fighter Squadron and its deep historical roots as the home of the Tuskegee Airmen. And as if commanding the busiest and most complex contracting squadron in Air Combat Command wasn't enough, he and Stacy decided to expand their family and welcome Jake into the world there in Vegas. Throughout his career, Jonathan established himself as a celebrated commander, a capable staff officer, and as a combat-minded joint warfighter. His efforts supported warfighters deployed in support of Operations Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom, Promise Keeping, New Dawn, Inherent Resolve, Spartan Shield, along with several global exercises, hurricane relief, and a first-of-its-kind COVID response, where he led Transcom's West Coast Rotator and COVID testing operation at the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, screening 31,000 passengers and establishing an isolation process and facilities for over 190 positive patients. His impact was felt from Air Combat Command to Indo-PACOM to CENTCOM and everything in between. Because of his proven performance, he was selected by Air Mobility Command to serve as the Vice Wing Commander for Exercise Mobility Guardian. He started up the first ever Afghan rotary wing airlift service contract utilizing Russian helicopters flown by Afghan pilots to expand cargo airlift capabilities in support of combat operations. He led Red Air contractor aggressor service for the United States Air Force Weapons School and Red Flag at Nellis, fielding 30 contracted foreign and domestic fighter aircraft to fight and train against U.S. pilots. He managed the development and fielding of the Navy's only communications satellite, the $6.4 billion Mobile User Objective System, and the Air Force's weather satellite, the $587 million Defense Meteorological, it's a hard word for me to say, satellite program. And as a testament to how his people-first leadership always shows through, when Creech Air Force Base's request to stand up its own dedicated contracting squadron unit was denied, he led, you really have to listen to this one, he led 7 members of his Nellis contracting team on a 55-mile, 2.5-day ruck march from Nellis to Creech to show that his team was dedicated to Creech's mission, even though not physically located at their base. Knowing that last point, it won't surprise you that Jonathan also earned 13 consecutive perfect Air Force fitness test scores from 2007 to 2019.
Thanks for mentioning that, ma'am.
Yeah, hey, that's an achievement for sure.
Only Jake destroyed my record.
I don't blame you, Jake. All of this led us to where we are today, with Jonathan ending his career, his Air Force career, here at USAFA. The cool part about what Jonathan was doing during those years where he was being the best contracting officer ever is that he was also serving as an admissions liaison officer. Jonathan served as an additional duty ALO from 2008 to 2017 for 9 years, including throughout his first squadron command tour. In fact, he was the Northern California Additional Duty ALO of the Year, both in 2010 and 2011. And even though he wasn't trying to get to USAFA as a regional director initially, he was trying to become a ROTC deck commander, but the Air Force sometimes changes their rules in like the middle of a game. So he was eventually vectored to the USAFA admissions because of his knowledge of and proven performance as an ALO. And that's how he came to serve in what I believe is the second best job in the Air Force, being a USAFA admissions regional director. And Jonathan is the perfect fit. Quirky enough to keep the lieutenants intrigued, knowledgeable about where to find top-tier talent, motivated to keep jumping on airplanes to go check on them, and driven to mentor and ensure his admissions advisors leave admissions as better officers and people. Jonathan's hard work was validated when he won the Headquarters USAFA Field Grade Officer of the Year for 2024. But beyond the hard work, I want to highlight what I've come to know is core to Jonathan's leadership philosophy, and that is taking care of his people. Jonathan is the kind of leader who will stand 10 toes down for his team, even when it's not comfortable to do so. And while Jonathan and I have bumped heads in a couple of these moments, I have always respected his compassion and his advocacy for his people. After all the billions of dollars that Jonathan helped our Air Force spend are gone, this is the legacy of his service that will live on. The people he led, mentored, motivated, and inspired, who will continue to do just that in our Air and Space Forces. Speaking of leading our Air and Space Forces, Jonathan and his teams helped deliver over 10,000 applications from just Region 2 alone over the last 3 years, a legacy that will continue to generate leaders in our Air and Space Forces over the next several decades. So what's next? The Czarney family is moving to Washington State. Stacy is now in the driver's seat. Jake is excited, sad to leave his best friend Riley, but excited to move back to the Pacific Northwest. Jonathan, well, he's going to finally get to fulfill his dream job of being a stay-at-home house husband. And Stacy, I love this for you. Jonathan, thank you for your 24 years of service to this nation. A 12-minute speech will never do justice to you or your family's sacrifices, or do justice to the contributions you've made to the national defense of this nation. But I know I speak for everyone in this room when I say thank you for a job well done. Now, let's get on with the business of the day.
Colonel Pipes, thank you for those words. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of the Meritorious Service Medal to Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Czarney. Attention to orders. This is to certify that the Meritorious Service Medal, 5th Oak Leaf Cluster, has been presented to Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan R. Czarney for meritorious service 22 June 2023 to 21 August 2026. Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan R. Czarney distinguished himself in the performance of outstanding service to the United States as Region 2 Director, United States Air Force Academy, Directorate of Admissions, Colorado Springs, Colorado. During this period, the outstanding professional skill, leadership, and ceaseless efforts of Colonel Czarney resulted in major contributions to the effectiveness and success of the admissions programs. He directed a team of 9 admissions advisors and over 400 admissions liaison officers to present academy opportunities across 17 states and 2 United States territories. His efforts resulted in the highest number of student recruits across all regions. He teamed with the science department to leverage HoloLens augmented reality goggles using the cutting-edge technology as a primer for discussions about engineering degrees at the academy. Colonel Czarney implemented the first ever parent program at Summer Seminar, connecting with over 800 parents and guardians. Finally, he was an invaluable addition at every admissions event, from Falcon visitation experiences to congressional staffer visits. The singularly distinctive accomplishments of Colonel Czarney culminate a long and distinguished career in the service of his country and reflect great credit upon himself and the United States Air Force. At this time, Colonel Pipes will present Lieutenant Colonel Czarney with his retirement certificate and certificate of appreciation to mark the end of active duty and beginning of life as a retiree for Jonathan and the Czarney family.
Publish the order.
Attention to orders. Special Order Alpha Charlie -001565. Effective 25 November 2025. Jonathan Ross Czarney, you are hereby relieved from active duty, organization, and station of assignment, retired, effective 1 September 2026, per Department of the Air Force Instruction 36-3203, in the grade of Lieutenant Colonel. Signed, General Kenneth S. Wilsbach, Chief of Staff, United States Air Force. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Lieutenant Colonel Czarney's father, Ron, and mother, Wendy, will now pin the retirement pin on his service coat. Thank you, Ron and Wendy. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Lieutenant Colonel retired Jonathan Czarney.
Okay, I didn't realize you guys were all going to stand up there. So I've got kind of some rebuttals to just about everything Colonel Pipes said. I'd like things I'd like to add, but what I will say is that I am really good at spending money, especially other people's money, and I'm extremely excited to have worked for the guy that prints the money. So when we've had leaders that have been able to deliver funds, I know how to get rid of those funds. I really have enjoyed what the AFSC that I got placed into, although it was a little bit shocking when they said, Jonathan Czarney, we had this thing at the detachment called the Wheel of Misfortune. They spun it, and it came up to the Air Force specialty code of 64P, and they said, you know, Cadet Czarney, you're a contracting officer. And I was like, what? Or they said you're a 64P, and I said, what the hell is a 64P? So, yeah, that was a little bit of a jarring thing. One other thing I wanted to mention, my folks came up and they pinned the pin on me. I made them modify this pin. It's a magnet. So I'm hoping that, you know, if in case of emergency, break glass, they'll call Colonel Czarney back to active duty roles. We can just whip this pin right off without having any kind of mark in my uniform. So yes, it's a magnet. That's why I was like telling her, what are you doing back there? It's a magnet. So also what I want to say about my folks is that, well, you guys probably all came here today expecting to see just, you know, that the Air Force was losing one lieutenant colonel. I'm here to tell you that we have lost an entire family, the entire Czarney Allseth family, because when you get Jonathan, you get the entire cadre of people. So anybody that's been in a unit that I've been assigned to, you've probably seen those faces a lot, whether it's because my wife is the key spouse, or it's because my parents come and visit, and all three of them collectively get involved in like every special program that we do. It's been awesome. They've been there. Stacy and my parents have been there all along from the start. In fact, I want to give you a quick anecdotal thing with my folks. So Colonel Pipes mentioned that we started up the parent program here. So a couple of years ago when we had summer seminar, the drop-off, and we get about 350 students that get dropped off, I came down into Arnold Hall that same day, and I saw all these parents, a lot of mothers weeping in the corner, you know, very emotional because they've dropped their kid off and they don't know what to do. They're just hanging around. So I asked Colonel Pipes, I said, ma'am, I'd love to, you know, next year kind of latch on to these folks and run a program. And basically the answer that came back was, you absolutely can do this. We just won't give you any manpower because they're all doing other tasks. So I called on mom and dad to come out here. So we got them some Air Force Academy garb, and they came out and helped us run the summer seminar program while everybody else was doing everything else. I mean, it's a all hands on deck kind of function, so I understand why no manpower could be spared. But you guys have been part of that from the start. All right, I have some other important notes today before we get into the sort of the speech, and one of those is they weren't able to be here today because one of our previous admissions advisors, Second Lieutenant Adriana Funes, is in Baltimore right now waiting for her rotator to go to Thule, Greenland, her first Space Force assignment. So she was one of our admissions advisors out in Patrick Space Force Base, and then she went to OTC at Peterson here, and she said she really wanted to be here, but she had to fly yesterday to get into Baltimore and get ready for her rotator. Also, this is a goal of mine. I drove the same car to my commissioning ceremony that I drove to my retirement ceremony today. So it's in the parking lot. Unfortunately, the battery died on it last week. So as I was boasting to AJ and Mac that I have this car that went 24, well, it's really almost 27 years old, then it died in the parking lot. And they were like, the week before your retirement. But because it was a stick shift, Mac, who's a retired colonel, he came out there and pushed me in the parking lot. We compression started it. So we got home that way. I'm sure most of you could not do that with your cars. The other thing, too, is another goal that was achieved. This is the same service dress that I was issued in 1998 when I was a cadet, including my leather shoes. So they're so shiny because normally I had my dad shine them when I was a cadet, usually because I was busy, but also because I learned very, very early on that if you want something done right, you get an enlisted man to do it. All right, so first of all, Colonel Pipes, I really want to thank you for being my presiding officer. As an additional duty liaison officer for 9 years, I'd previously worked with your predecessors, Colonel Benishek, then Colonel Primus, and so now I've had the opportunity to work for you. We are at a very unique time in admissions, and I would say that no other USAFA director of admissions faces the same challenges that you face, the changing environment of what our recruiting goals are, and also the technology modernization that Colonel Pipes, as a visionary, is trying to get ahead of. And so I really think that admissions is blessed to have you, ma'am. leading this effort. It's obviously difficult. We're talking big contracts. We're talking major changes to policy. But she is taking admissions in a very different direction and very quickly than any one of her predecessors before her. All right, you guys all came today to honor me, and I have to tell you guys, mission accomplished. I really feel awesome that you guys are here today, and that we also cross paths over my Air Force career. This has been awesome. I can't really communicate to you how honored I am to have you guys come attend and listen to this garbly gook I'm going to throw at you for the next few minutes. So at the risk of missing probably many of you guys, I want to mention a few people in the audience and kind of how we cross paths, and then in sort of a tangential way, talk a little bit about the story of my service. First, we have Lieutenant Colonel retired and now SES, Mr. Curtis Jordan. He was my first real, that's okay. I clap for him too. Sir, I got a lot of things to say about you. You were my first real squadron commander after coming out of the Naval Postgraduate School. He put me on G-Series orders very early on as a first lieutenant when he deployed to Iraq. You probably don't remember this, sir, but you sent the squadron a picture of you from that deployment standing next to an Iraqi man with a dyed thumb who had just voted for the very first time in his country. He also had to call me a few times from Iraq. Usually these were some fairly unpleasant calls because we had some things contractually that were failing in the squadron, and he needed me to get them back on track. Basically, he was giving me some work to do. So I remember the very first call. I think he purposely waited until 2 a.m. in the morning to call me. Yep, okay. But I got up out of bed, and I answered on a slider phone back in the day, okay? And he could tell that I was a bit groggy. And I remember he said, "John, I'm going to give you a minute to collect yourself." And I knew I was in trouble. So, sir, it was from your commitment and your devotion to the mission that I learned about being a contingency contracting officer and a deployed leader. You weren't able to be at every one of my changes of command, but I mentioned you every time I took the flag and every time I passed the flag. Thank you very much. He's still serving airmen and other service members today as a senior executive in the Veterans Administration. Master Sergeant retired Tom Ebenho, somewhere out there, in the back, all right. So Tom was our squadron first sergeant and superintendent at the 62nd Contracting Squadron. He and I deployed together as a two-man team for my first deployment, supporting the busiest aerial port of debarkation in the Middle East during the first Iraq surge. You were a great coach, and he watched over me closely as a young lieutenant. For those of you that know me well, you probably know that about midday, if I haven't eaten, I tend to get pretty hangry. So, yeah. So I was the designated driver for that deployment, driving all over Kuwait City. And he could tell that as my driving got a little bit more aggressive as the day went on, that he needed to intervene. So he frequently would say, "Hey, LT, how about some beef jerky?" So he kept the center console clearly, very well stocked. Colonel Christopher Hall and Miss Elizabeth Schneider from the 627th Air Base Group, who collectively helped control the chaos on the largest joint base on the planet. If you think the base you're stationed at has challenges, consider trying to run an installation with 44,000 service members, most of them unruly soldiers, over 140 aircraft, firing ranges that can accommodate up to 155 millimeter howitzers, 6 child development centers, its own locomotives and rail system, and over 5,800 housing units. Mrs. Nancy Webb. Nancy served as a contract supervisor with the Defense Contract Management Agency. Most of the military satellite constellations, from Milstar, I'm dating her a little bit with the Milstar there, but okay, Milstar to the Space-Based Infrared System, or SBIRS, to the Advanced Extremely High Frequency, or AEHF program, have been influenced by her business oversight. She taught me a lot about the proper running of large programs costing into the billions of dollars, while I worked to support the Navy's only communication satellite program for naval special warfare. Colonel Olga Brandt. We served together at the Pentagon shaping the career paths of every officer and civilian in contracting. And now she's leading all of our contingency contracting officers deployed to countless locations across the globe as the Air Force's Director of Contingency Contracting. She's one of the few officers left in the Air Force with more contingency expertise than myself. Colonel Allison Gonzalez, she's a family friend and early trader that crossed over from the Air Force to the Space Force. Although given your leadership and your technological, knowledge and your education, that was sort of a no-brainer move. She really helped admissions because when the new Space Force Platinum uniform, which you probably saw with our proffer already, when that came out and was released to a very, very select few in the Air Force, I only had to place one phone call to her to say, can you get all of our admissions advisors in that first tranche? And before the end of the day, they all got emails from the program office getting them into those platinums, and so we could put them out in front of Americans across the country to get them excited about space. Thanks, ma'am. Colonel Retired Shay Kennebrae. So I want you to picture Cobb Adder, or Contingency Operating Base Adder, Iraq, 2009, just outside the city of Nasiriyah. Colonel Kennebrae was the DoD's answer for my request to grant increased authority to one of my lieutenants. I was a bit surprised when some majors showed up unannounced instead of that increased authority. But he proved to be incredibly helpful. He still made me do most of the work, but he used his sheer strength from Air Force Rugby and his, I wrote down here, aggravating personality. He'll understand that. To really kind of block and tackle all of the Army brass, and so we could properly support all of Southern Iraq. Colonel Retired Patrick Albritton. We were squadron commanders together at Moody Air Force Base when it was my first command and his second. He later deployed downrange to be a commander for his third time. Most of the gray hair we share is a result of the tough command tours we've both pulled together. I learned a lot from him about running a unit, leading airmen, and resolving conflicts. He showed that engineers do, in fact, lead the way. Lieutenant Colonel An Vu Nguyen is an accomplished B-1 pilot and now an admissions liaison officer and the leader of ALOs across Georgia and North Florida, one of the most successful units in the country in terms of the number of applicants generated and the leadership he's demonstrating. He was trying to work out some way to buzz today's ceremony with a B-1 without getting some kind of reprimand, but I'm really glad he's just in the audience today instead. He was telling me he was trying to figure this all out. Lieutenant Colonel James Gallagher. So James is a standout in the Air Force contracting community. He excelled as my specialized contracts flight commander at Nellis Air Force Base, where he ran a number of Air Force contracts that were firsts in the military. Notably, he developed, awarded, and administered the Air Force's first adversary air contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, bringing contracted fighter jets to fight against the weapons school and during red flag exercises. Essentially, he ran his own fighter squadron, turning out more sorties than any other flying squadron at Nellis, often up to 30 sorties per day. And he also inadvertently started an international arms race for military fighter aircraft from South Africa to the Netherlands. By the way, he flew his own plane here today for the ceremony. So he sent me pictures all along the way, which apparently he's got some kind of responder up there in the aircraft. Starlink, okay. Lieutenant Colonel Amanda Barrett and Lieutenant Colonel Nicholas Barrett. We were neighbors at Joint Base Lewis McChord together, and they are both high-achieving support and ops officers who share the same love and devotion to their son Brooks that Stacy and I have for Jake. Recently, Nick took some time out of his schedule to even chair one of our officer professional development sessions for my lieutenants, talking about how to balance a military career and a joint spouse arrangement. So I really appreciate that, Nick. Major Anthrokira Izulu Dobbs. Yes, that's a real name. But she was my deputy in Saudi Arabia as we helped to stand up Prince Sultan Air Base again. As an MQ-9 Reaper pilot, she instilled quite a bit of fear into our Saudi counterparts, especially when I would threaten them that she had her Reaper ball facing their way from up above, which they usually looked like they were actually thinking that somehow she was controlling it. And finally, Lieutenant Colonel retired Clint Townsend. Clint is a battle-tested civil engineer with significant deployed and command experience. We deployed together to help U.S. Central Command try to get a handle on the trillions of dollars spent and the tens of thousands of contract personnel operating under contract in the Middle East. Clint earned a Purple Heart when he was shot by a sniper in Afghanistan, back in the early days of the war when it was the Wild, Wild West, when we were out there the first time, when he was serving as a leader in a provincial reconstruction team. It's been a pleasure to cross paths with him. So there's a few airmen that we lost during my commands that I'd like to recognize today. Captain William Davis, Miss Remy Matthijs, Master Sergeant Mariko Gray, Staff Sergeant Joshua Lanou, and Senior Master Sergeant retired Dennis Staples, who was a prior Security Forces defender, who knew and worked with Second Lieutenant Jonathan Czarney, and later as a civilian was supervised by Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Czarney. Dennis passed away, but he was recently, as in like 2 days ago, was recognized and honored with the naming of a new small arms range at Joint Base Lewis McChord. While they may be gone, they are not forgotten. So I'd like to end my coverage of my discussion about people on a high note and talk about the two service members that had the biggest impacts in my decision to serve. My father, Airman First Class Ronald Czarney, and my uncle, Chief Master Sergeant retired Chuck Hopper. While I never got to see my father serve, the stories about him being in the Air Force and the occasional military trinket uncovered at the house had a profound impact on me. I feel lucky to have trained in the same basic training facilities as my dad at Lackland Air Force Base. I spent, as Colonel Pipes had mentioned, I spent every summer from 7 years old to age 21 visiting my uncle, Chief Master Sergeant, now retired, Chuck Hopper. As a maintainer, he had access to the flight line, aircraft, and connections across the base. He exposed me to so much in the Air Force, from explosive ordnance disposal, where I even got to blow up something with him. I got to yell fire in the hole and blow up something. That was really cool. To the running of back shops around the base. He even got me jacked up one time by security forces, so I had to eat some pavement there on the flight line one time when he took me out to the flight line, and he had a badge and I had no badge, and then we got separated, and I've never been more afraid in my life because 18-year-old people with guns were standing all around me as I was on the ground. But Chief Hopper instilled in me an appreciation for the men, the machines, and the missions that have made our country so great and so safe and made me want to carry on in his footsteps. All right, lastly, I'd like to thank our admissions team. So our slogan in admissions is, admissions, it all starts here. And I was going to have Bonnie give me a shout out, but the boss kind of took my thunder. She had to do it too. So, do you want to do it? It all starts here. So I'm going to tell you that that's a bit inaccurate, okay? We're off by one letter, and that's the letter T. Admissions, in fact, does not start here. It starts there. Out there, somewhere around the country or the globe, with admissions liaison officers or admissions advisors, trying to attract and recruit the very best Americans to consider military service and attendance at the Air Force Academy. So it's a harder mission than most people think. While we're here today on this beautiful campus, imagine for a minute that you're trying to tell a student from Florida they should consider a school not near the beach, but up in the mountains where it starts snowing in October and doesn't end till May. Or you're telling a kid in the Northeast that there's a service academy way out west when all they're familiar with is what's close to them. West Point, Annapolis, the Coast Guard Academy, or the Merchant Marine Academy. It's not easy convincing a young person from Texas who's always dreamed of having a diploma on their wall from the University of Texas, hook 'em horns, Texas A&M, go Aggies, or Texas Tech, guns up, instead to apply to a school in Colorado. So it is a very involved mission set that the admissions team has to execute. And so I'd like to just share with you a quick story about somebody that we touched paths with, and they now are in the cadet wing. We're going to call him E. But this young man, E, he was discovered by a junior ROTC instructor that was located in Tennessee. That junior ROTC instructor and unit commander is also a USAFA grad, and he recognized something special in E. E attended a Title I school and was basically homeless. He had spent some time on the street, was eventually brought in by his grandmother, but the deck was definitely stacked against E. He had no vehicle to commute to school each day. The detachment brought some money together and bought him an e-bike. Well, as you know, in the application process, you have to get a nomination from either a senator, the vice president of the United States, or one of your congressmen or woman. Well, E decided to pull a shift at his part-time job the morning before his nominations interview. And he was driving from his job after having pulled a morning shift to his interview on his e-bike when he was hit by a car. So essentially, this young man, everything seemed to go wrong, and he was just barely on the cusp of being competitive for USAFA. Through a stroke of luck, he was eventually selected to receive a prep school slot. We have 3 counselors that are here today that really took some effort. They wanted to be his sponsor family while he was a preppy, and then now they are his sponsor families here because he just started class of 2030 this last June. And those are Carolyn, Ramika, and Nicole, who's not here today. All served and helped him along the way. On his journey over here to start the prep school, we coordinated with the Tennessee Parents Club because he basically was boarding a plane but had nowhere to go. So we made sure that he was ready to be received on this end and properly bedded down before I-Day. Now he's thriving as a cadet, and E has aspirations to become an Air Force flight surgeon. So for all those ALOs, AAs, and admission staffers that put in the monumental effort to onboard generation after generation of new Air Force and Space Force leaders, I thank you. So a lot of people have asked me, where am I going from here? So I'm going to take a pause behind the podium for 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay. I'm going to show you where we're going from here. Okay, so I gave a presentation in college as a senior in BDUs. So like the lieutenants, I don't think some people were looking at that and going, what are BDUs? So I gave a presentation in BDUs, but then reached behind the podium, talked about service and how I was very interested in serving in the Air Force, but that my real passion was to be a stay-at-home dad and house husband, okay? So I think I made too many promises to Stacy because she's the one driving this retirement. This was her idea. So I have previously promised her, you will never have to cook a meal again. You will never have to put gas in your car. You will never have to do laundry again. I got all this. So my goal for the last assignment is she was like, no, that's not happening. We're done. We're done at 24, and this is what we're going to do. So this all really originated from my father. So growing up, he had been serving with a company for a very long time, and they laid him off, and he had a very lengthy severance package. So for the first year, he didn't even bother looking for jobs. He was our stay-at-home dad. He drove me to school every day. He volunteered at the school. He took care of my mom's dry cleaning. He ran the house, and that was a great year. I had a great year with my dad at the helm. So I really can't wait to be Stacy's handyman, her stay-at-home dad, her stay-at-home house husband. She has given me instructions that I'm not to interrupt her when she's working during the day. So we've got a new system. I'm going to write down all my thoughts on a notepad so I don't come to her every 20 minutes and ask a question. But really and truly, the main goal here is that I'm looking forward to ending the dreaded 5 o'clock conversation that happens every day. So what's the plan for dinner? Which neither of us ever have an answer for. So I've spent a lot of the government's money, and while I was spending, the Air Force took great care of me and my family. I've been working since I was 14 years old. I started as a paperboy. I added a job with an accounting firm in downtown Seattle when I turned 16. Then I ran my own lawn care business, all before joining the Air Force. So honestly, I'm ready for a break. Everyone, thank you for being here today to help me celebrate.
Another round of applause, please, for Lieutenant Colonel retired Jonathan Czarney. Lieutenant Colonel Czarney, and please take your seats. Lieutenant Colonel Czarney has received certificates of appreciation from the Commander-in-Chief and the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. At this time, I will read the certificate from Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. I am proud to join your friends and family in congratulating you on your retirement from the United States Air Force. The achievements and contributions you have made throughout your career embody our core values of integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. Your retirement is well deserved, but your selfless contributions will be sorely missed. On behalf of airmen, families, and the many lives you have touched over the years, thank you for your faithful and devoted service. As this chapter closes and a new one begins, I wish you the very best and pray the years ahead are filled with love, laughter, and your continued success. Signed, David R. Wolf, Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. At this time, Colonel Pipes will present certificates of appreciation for Stacy Elseth and Jake Czarney on behalf of the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and the Superintendent of the United States Air Force Academy. Jake Ross Czarney. This is to certify that on the occasion of the retirement of his father from active duty with the United States Air Force, has earned grateful appreciation for his flexibility and sacrifices. His support and understanding helped to make possible his father's lasting contribution to the nation. Signed, Lieutenant General Tony Bauernfeind, United States Air Force Academy Superintendent. Stacy Louise Elseth. In grateful appreciation, the United States Air Force presents this certificate of recognition to Stacy Louise Elseth for the commitment and numerous contributions that made positive impacts to the nation's defense. Thank you for the support which gave strength and purpose to your spouse's service. Signed, Lieutenant General Tony Bauernfeind, United States Air Force Academy Superintendent, and General Kenneth S. Wilsbach, Chief of Staff, United States Air Force.
I'm just going to use this opportunity to say a couple things here. Jake, you're my favorite little dude in the whole world. I can't wait to be your full-time stay-at-home dad so I can be super involved. He just earned his black belt in Taekwondo. Mini masters, so it's mini. It was really based off of attendance, and so he had to go to 125 classes. And I asked Stacy, how many of those do you think I made? And she said, 25, maybe 35. So that's why I want to be more involved, so I could be there at all 125. So Jake came along after me and Mommy knew each other for 4 years. Then we're married for 16 years. That's how Colonel Pipes always said it. You were married for 16 years before you had a baby? But he was born in Nellis Air Force Base, and he proved that what happens in Vegas doesn't always stay in Vegas. All right, Stacy, you wanted me not to keep it, you don't want anything gushy or really super long. I just have to say, I've been super blessed to have you as my partner. Not only do I love the hell out of you, she is a business person just like me. She's a certified public accountant and corporate auditor. She spends a lot of time in Fortune 500 companies, and we talk shop at home all the time. She has been my sounding board for a lot of business decisions in the squadrons. And hopefully I've tried to impart, although sometimes she brings me some really complex problems that I give her my best shot at an answer to help on her side. Long ago, we talked about only serving the 4-year service commitment after ROTC and then moving back to Washington. And I don't know where those 4 years went, but here we are at 24. And we were going to go a little bit longer, but I figured when she said that she was ready to move back to Washington, that we'll strike while the iron was hot. So we're going to do that. I also just want to point out that about 3 weeks ago, Stacy went to Tanzania and summited Mount Kilimanjaro. So I didn't get to go. First of all, it was a girls' trip, but also with work and everything like that. So those are the types of activities and adventures that we're all going to be doing when I can run that house and be the gear manager. So, Stacy, very glad that you've been by my side through this journey. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the formal portion of today's ceremony. We sincerely appreciate your attendance today. We invite you to join us in the center of the ballroom for a reception. At this time, please rise for the singing of the Air Force song and the departure of the official party. On behalf of Jonathan and Stacy, thank you for sharing this special moment with them today. Have a wonderful Air Force Day.